Welcome to our weekly exploration of excellence. I hit my head on the mic. I gotta get somebody in here to shut the amp off. Losers Lunch, as we do every Monday, 12 o'clock, Facebook Live, LinkedIn Live, YouTube Live. Now we got to figure out some other formats that we could be live on. Special guest, Mr. I don't know, A. Scott Rutkay from Concourse Land Transfer. Welcome, Scott.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for having me.
We're pleased to have you. Our co-host for the week, special co-host for the week. So as we do here on the program, we're going to start off with a little bit of market. Now, for those of you that are new, and I got to figure out this camera, by the way, because I never look into it. I'm trying to keep the light of God out of the way. And so if I'm not looking at the camera and that bothers you, it's because I can't look at the goddamn camera. That's why. So I should put it over here because I seem to want to look at it over there. Anyway, Mike Colasso is going to be pissed off that I was fiddling with the camera for 40 seconds of important airtime. So if you're new to the program, this might sound a bit foreign to you. If you're not, you're going to recognize these words. Rates are never going up. Period. The 10-year right now broke 280 at 277. Mortgages, depending on the coupon you're looking at, up a full point. Nice little rally underway as we head into a really, really big week. I have to tell you, and we're going to get into that here right now. Not a hell of a lot going on today. National Activity Index. Who the hell cares about that? Tomorrow, building permits, durables, which includes CapEx, by the way. Red Book. Who cares? Case Shiller. We like to hear about that. FHFA home prices, Richmond Fed, consumer confidence, which is banging around all-time lows the last few months, new home sales, two-year note auction, Wednesday, NBA mortgage apps. We talked about it last week. Was the refi going to go below 1,000? It came damn close. Let's see what happens this week. Pending home sales, some gas numbers, some 2- and 5-year note auctions. Thursday, Q1 GDP. That's the big one, folks. We're expecting 1.1 headline. I'm going to digress into that in a second. That number worries me a little bit. Jobless claims, which are sticking below 200 grand. KC Fed. We got some employment and income numbers on Friday. PCE, which used to mean more than CPI and PPI. We'll see where we are on that. Some sentiment, Dallas and Chicago data. So why am I nervous about the GDP number? Well, I am and I'm not. Okay, first thing, because last quarter was 6.9. So for this quarter to be 1.1 is a tremendous drop, Scott. And so whenever we go from a big number to a small number or vice versa, it worries me a little bit because there's some carryover that maybe we're not thinking about. Now, that being said, and those of you who are or familiar with the program know that I like the ISMs. They're a great indicator of GDP and the economy in general. They've been weakening, no doubt about it. So it wouldn't be a shock if Q1 GDP wasn't great. Okay. I'd much rather we be expecting a number of 2.22 that we disappoint than a number of 1.1. And if we come in at 1.8, it's still really not a great number, yet everybody, breathes this sigh of relief that it wasn't terrible, and we get some pressure on interest rates. You're going to want to look at the components of GDP. There's no doubt about it. But the fact that we're anticipating a headline of 1.1, and the other thing I want to say, if you remember last quarter, was mostly driven by inventory increases. We've talked about the consumer largely being absent in this recovery. Hell, when you combine that with weakening ISMs, I could make a case, okay, for like a bad number here. I could make a real good case for that. It's just that I don't trust these numbers anymore. I hate to be a conspiracy theorist, but and not to harp on this retail sales number in January, but when the real number is -18 and the headline's 3.8, boy, it really makes you suspicious of what is affecting the numbers. And I want to talk to you a little bit about that here in a second, Scott, which will have nothing to do with mortgages and nothing to do with title. But nonetheless, we're going to talk about it because that's what we do here. Just looking at the rest of this data, a lot of data, some of it really market moving, but some of it just, to me, background noise. I think that the bonds are making a real good case for consolidating here and that we've hit the highs. I actually think we've hit the low in price and the high in yield. So I was talking to Neil Robinson earlier in a one-on-one, and we were talking about the market. And I said, look, if I just do sort of back of the napkin capital markets, we're at essentially 10-year lows in price on mortgage TBAs. Does the economy justify that? Okay. I think that the greater economy would tell you no. And I'm going to want to talk about a little bit of that as well. Who's being left out of this so-called recovery, and who is inflation really hitting, and who they're not, but and who it's not. And this mantra and thesis that I've had about how information and automation are anti-wage and anti-price. But has COVID been the catalyst for flipping the script on that a little bit, specifically when it comes to things that are either high-end or not made in mass quantities, okay? So as a man of the people, Scott, what I'd like to know is this. If you think about your business and some of the technological pressures potentially on title, okay, and settlement, but then you think about some of the things that you like, a fine meal, wine, watches, things of that nature that have been adversely impacted by the internet. If anything, you have like this black market, this gray market of people cornering the market on high-end cars and watches and such, and driving price up. That juxtaposition of things. Are you seeing the same thing that I'm seeing, which is that wealth gap is widening and certain businesses are being affected differently by information and automation? What says you?
Sure. So, the title business has changed quite a bit in the last, let's say, 5 years, and maybe even beginning longer than that. So long gone are the days of rooms full of typists typing out policies. That's all automated now. Long gone are the days of me sending individual searchers into vaults looking for documents. That's all automated now. We probably run our business and about 40% of the employees that we would have in, say, 2003, 2004, 2005. And I really think that started to change a little bit when I opened the first business in 2010. And it's certainly changed quite a bit when we opened this one in 2021. As far as the other items, they've gone bonkers, as you've said. Luxury goods are through the roof. It's impossible to get, anything you want that's a luxury item. The secondary market, the gray market, has gone crazy. And it's interesting to see what that information, because you have all the information that you ever need about any item that you'd ever want at your fingertips. And that's almost seemed to have widened that gap you're talking about. Now it's a job. Instead of, a guy buying a watch, keeping it for 5 years and selling it to somebody he knows, now people have made a business of finding items, finding how to sell them on the secondary market, and now that's their career. And it's everything. It's not just, watches and cars. It's wine. It's, as you said, it's pretty much everything. In fact, in New York City, people sell reservations to restaurants. So I get a restaurant reservation that you might want, and I sell it to you, which is so crazy you can't even believe it.
I remember a day and age when scalping was illegal. And by the way, I got to say something here, folks. And people ask me all the time, what would you do if you were in this position, or what'd you do in that position? I am, generally speaking, anti-big government. Okay. That being said, somebody's got to step in here and stop this madness. Folks still can't buy Xboxes and PS5s. I was talking to somebody yesterday about it. It's like, I won't pay for it. I'm dying to get a PS5. I can't get one. 2 years later. It's insanity.
What I can't figure out is the car dealerships. You go looking for a car now, from top to bottom. Doesn't even matter what kind of car you're looking for. We're not talking about exotics. Honda Civics are going above MSRP. That I can't figure out how that's legal.
So one of the things that Neil and I looked at, and I have a bunch of questions from what you said, and I want to further this point, but just as a point of digression for a second. So I looked at a Rolex Daytona, okay? One of sort of the hallmarks, the bellwether of this black, watch market, this gray watch market, right? So first things first, there are 317 Rolex dealers in America. I looked that up. So assuming the internet's right, which purportedly it's if it's on the internet, it's true. But there's 317 Rolex dealers in America, okay? You can walk into any single Rolex dealer right now and there not be a watch in the shop, not a single watch, folks. Or they have watches that aren't for sale. They're just for show because they're tired of having empty cabinets, okay, and display cases. There were, I looked on Chrono 24. Work with me a little bit because I closed out the window, but there was something like 6,783 Daytonas for sale on Chrono. Hardly the definition of scarce, okay? Right. And what I sort of did was I said I took 6,700 watches and I divided by 300 dealers and came up with a number of whatever, 20 odd, 22, 23. So think about this. I've got an absolutely empty dealership, okay? But if I took every watch that was on Chrono and I put it in the dealerships, every watch would have 23 Daytonas in them. And that's not to speak to their other, their other classes of watch, okay? So now if you assume I've got a Datejust, a Day-Date, I've got a Yacht 1, a Yacht 2, I've got, 2 Submariners or whatever, I got a GMT. Let's just say I got a Sea Dweller, I've got, what's the other one, the airplane one, whatever it is. So I've got conservatively 10 different watch types Rolex makes, conservatively. Forget about the Cellinis and whatnot. Call it 15. That means that each watch dealer could have 300 watches. Well, I take that back because I don't know how many of each are on Chrono. But if you just sort of did some back of the napkin math, maybe every single dealership would have 300 watches in there. Okay? Because here's the thing. For anybody that's not in the watch game, right, the answer isn't, well, these are used watches. Most of these watches are not used, or they're just conveniently used.
Right.
Okay? Especially you look at Pateks. These Pateks are like triple sealed or whatever they call them. The guys just literally buy them and put them in a vault because they don't want to put their money
So
elsewhere.
what you also find, exactly right. So they're hedging that these are going to go up, obviously. So they're using them as investments versus using them for what their intended purpose is. What you also find in sites like that is that a lot of those people don't own the watches that they're selling or any of the items that they're selling. No matter, pick the hobby you like. So I'll put a picture of something and say I'm selling it. It retails for 12 grand. I'm selling it for 30. And then if you say yes, I got to find a guy to that I can buy it from for 28, so I can make my 2 grand. And that's the thing, is that you have a whole industry of people selling things they don't own, and then hoping like heck they can get it slightly cheaper, and then driving up the market by trying to say, listen, I can't get it for 30 anymore. Now it's 35 because I can only buy it for 32.
Makes me think of CDOs and synthetic CEOs that brought a world economy to its knees. And one of the reasons why I think that this is potentially the mother of all bubbles. Okay. And because it's all smoke and mirrors. Again, there probably aren't 6,700 people that would buy a Daytona tomorrow at retail, much less at 3X. 4X, whatever, okay? But if you can't get them and you can't find them, if you sell one of them at that, we talk about that in the financial markets, particularly TBAs, when we talk about liquidity. And think about what happened the Friday, Good Friday, Holy Thursday before Good Friday. Like we were just sort of cruising along, started positive, and then by the time 2:00 came, got absolutely taken to the woodshed. That's not because every human being on the planet is saying, sell, sell, sell. It's because every, senior trader is out at the Hamptons already, on their helicopter drinking gin and tonics, okay? And they left, to the junior said, don't fuck this up. And 3 guys are making a market,
right?
And this is potentially the mother of all bubbles, okay? And it could end really badly, and that's why I predicted. And by the way, everyone that said bullshit about how housing supply is, we got 2, 3, 4 years to catch up. Markets are already seeing demand meeting supply. I'm hearing about this from everybody that I talk to because I keep saying this. It's like your navigation app. Traffic here, they push you here, but they don't contemplate that when they push everybody there, it's going to be worse here than it is there. Same thing here. It's like, yeah, great. We don't have enough inventory at 2%. Okay. At X price. Well, at 5% and Y price, what's the demand? A hell of a lot less as inventory is growing. So, I am absolutely still steadfast in believing that inventory reaches equilibrium no later than next summer, and that we are looking at recession no later than end of 24. And everybody's just sort of go back and watch episodes from 5 months ago when no one was saying this. Which, by the way, last week we said float. If you floated last week, you are really, really happy. Bulls and bears make money. Pigs get slaughtered. Be careful this week. A lot of data. The Fed still has their neck on the economy. What I would say is I feel like we're going to follow through tomorrow. I don't think that this is going to be a one and done like it's been recently. I'd lock today anybody that was like lost the deal, and that another half a point move could push them out again. Lock those people. The people that have a little more wiggle room, wait till tomorrow. If we rally again, then I think you have to think seriously. 3 days in a row and we're on to something, folks. If we rallied for the first 3 days this week, I am feeling really good about setting 29X as the top. Got a couple questions for you. You talked about 40% of the employees. First things first, when did that automation really start in earnest in the title business? If you had to put sort of like a date on it, a year on it.
Yeah, so I started my first agency in 2010. And that's when I saw the big shift away from a lot of the typing aspect of it, which is incredibly time consuming. And it also requires, in my business, I guess what I would say is there's an employee that's sort of like a loan processor and a loan underwriter all at once. And they're title readers. And it's a highly specialized employee, and they get paid sort of commensurate with an underwriter, a little bit less, but roughly in that number. So it's a highly specialized employee that does the actual reading of the title. That job doesn't exist in a real way anymore. I definitely have somebody who does it. We do it for commercial deals. We do it for complicated deals. But for deals that are simple deals, buy, sells, simple deals, refis, that is all automated. I use a lot of outsourced companies. Usually they're owned by the underwriter. So I write for Fidelity. Fidelity does the writing and the reading. And the reason why we like that is they're taking all the risk. So if they miss something like a mortgage, they miss something like an easement, and I use their product, they're on the hook for that mistake and we're not. So we've ceded a lot of the responsibility back to the underwriter for no more money. The split is exactly the same as it is. They charge us no more relative to what searches would cost, and far cheaper than if I had that employee. So that classification is gone completely. And then all the people that were sort of secretarial works, let's say typing policies, typing commitments, that's been long gone, long before 2010. So that employee, the real, sort of secretarial work aspect of it, keystroke entry, that's long gone before that as well.
Couple thoughts. First of all, as you're talking about all this automation, you have a shit ton of fucking papers behind you, by the way. You should see the stack of papers that you have there.
That is not that automated. Well, no, the problem is this business is still a business of paper. And until we get e-notarization nationwide for all documents, and we're able to record everything electronically, which isn't done yet, there's going to be paper. And you should see, and I resisted it like crazy. But we still have file cabinets with files. And it pains me to see it because I don't think we need it. But until that's done in earnest nationwide, we're stuck with it.
Gotcha. Your internet stinks over there. So by the way, couple of parallel. I just want to point out a few things. Epcot Center, progress. I wore this shirt intentionally because I knew we were going to be talking about progress. The riff that I played to open the show, I was remiss in I was mentioning it. It's Little Dreamer off of Van Halen 1. So, the tie-in here, the dream, progress, automation, why rates are never going up. One of the other things that I examined with Neil this morning was I went on Amazon and I looked for a television. I said, just out of curiosity, when all we're talking about is inflation right now. Inflation. Inflation's crazy. We got to stamp it out. What's good? The Fed, inflation. And I went on, I said, you know what? What are things that people use, right? And an iPhone. For the most part, iPhones haven't gone up in price. The iPhone you got last year was same price as always, right? Give or take. Apple Watches haven't gone up in price. No. So I looked at Amazon. I looked for a TV, and I found a 70 or an 80-inch TV for like $600. And I remember my first LED TV was a 42-inch Samsung, and ran like $1,800, $2,000. Okay. I'm getting an 80-inch TV right now if I wanted to for $680. And by the way, almost every TV I looked at on Amazon showed a price break. That's sort of the duplicity of this economy that, I'll say two things. I don't know that the Fed is properly considering. And quite frankly, I'm even struggling. Like for 20, 25 years, the economy has been clear to me. I think that it's really, the dots have been easy to connect. Right now, I'm starting to wonder who wins here. Does the information and automation that's dumbing down prices, that's getting rid of 60% of your workforce, okay? And that's only going to get worse, theoretically, right? And where does this money go? Well, in a lot of ways, it's gone to lowering prices, okay? In other ways, it's going to enriching the so-called 1%. Elon Musk, who's about to buy Twitter, thank God. Jeff Bezos. And I said this, I think in 2020 last year, when you look at per capita income, household income, it hasn't really gone up tremendously since 1990. Yet the richest person in the world is worth something like 1,000-fold or 100-fold what the richest person was worth in 90. More money is going to fewer people because of how the funnel is changing. So that segues me a little bit into something that I wanted to talk about here. And I covered this ground in one of my one-on-ones last week. And the question that I ask is, why does the workforce at large, as we begin to wind down here, and I'm going to ask you, what are some of the things that you do? But why do I find that the workforce at large tends to not want to invest in their jobs and their careers, and in some cases, even their businesses, the same way that we invest in our stocks, okay, in our 401k. Now, I'm not reading you here the Webster's definition of invest, but sort of the Phil Mancuso definition of investing is, I make a sacrifice for the future. If I buy a stock, I am, or a mutual fund, whatever, I am without that money. I cannot use that money for something else. Unless, of course, I borrow it on margin. Forget about that, though. So I commit financial resources for the hope, and it's not even a guarantee, the hope of a future return, beyond which I can use that money for otherwise. And I often find that in business, people don't invest the same way. They don't invest in getting better. And they certainly don't invest in their careers. Oftentimes, hey, I want to get the highest paying job I could get, or I want to do the most business I could get, even if it's at the expense of others or the future, or we're going to run a business on a shoestring because I want to extract maximum profits. In many ways, I find that whether it be workers, managers, or business owners and entrepreneurs, they actually invest in their careers and their businesses the exact opposite. They don't want to make any sacrifice. They don't, sort of the days of, working, under someone's wing for less money almost doesn't exist anymore. That sacrifice, So what are your thoughts about that observation? Do you think that I have that right or wrong? And then B, what do you do to invest in your, in your career and in your business? And what are some of the things that you've done? The sacrifices that you may have made.
Yeah. So I'm going to
your business future.
So I'm going to sort of discuss that by telling you a story about my most recent hire, and it's going illustrate your point in a way that, sort of is the opposite of what you're saying. So this individual came to me. We were looking for a employee for our New Jersey office. And this individual came into the office, did an interview, and I looked at her resume and I said, so tell me about your title experience. You have a lot of experience, mortgages, title. Tell me about, what your strengths are. And she said, well, Scott, I have to tell you, most of my experience is in Texas and Florida. That's where I did most of my work. I have family in Texas. Sorry about that, guys.
You got to mute. You got to mute stuff.
I have.
When you're on Losers Lunch. This is a high class.
You're right about that.
Yeah.
So in the interview, she said most of my experience is in Texas. What she didn't know is that we are in the process of getting our Texas license, and one of the requirements is that you have to be you have to reside in Texas. You have to have a license in Texas, both of which things she theoretically could have. So all of a sudden, a light went off in my head, and I said, do you have any interest in going back to Texas? And she said, I do. That's where all my family is. I'd love to be there. My husband works remote. I can't wait. And then in the process of me trying to hire her, so this is all negotiating, when you would start, what salary, that kind of thing. She's looking around for spaces for me in Texas. She's talking to the department to try to figure out how she can fast track a license to renew hers, because she had put hers on ice when she came back to New Jersey. I have very seldom run into an individual that puts that much effort into a job she doesn't even have yet, and is really thinking about her future. She said, when we hire more people here, I want to lead them. I have a lot of experience. I think I could be a huge asset to the business, for the people that don't know anything about these states. Just thinking about what she wants to do for the future. This was such a surprise to me that it illustrates the point you're making. We're so used to the opposite of that happening. We're so used to people who don't have that interest in putting, concourse first in this case, that it blew my mind. And obviously she was the best candidate, and obviously she was the most motivated to get the job. Wasn't taking no for an answer. If more people were like that, then I'd have even less employees, because you'd have people who really cared about the effort that they're putting in. And not that I have a smallish pool of employees, relative to you guys. So I was able to control a little bit better who we had. But still, having someone like that really blew us away.
Gotcha. Well, as we wrap up here, I think that where we get into like sort of a Groundhog Day moment on this show, folks, and I know that I sound like a broken record at times. You reap what you sow. If you endeavor to level up, and if you endeavor to be the best that you could be, if you try to invest in your profession, okay, you make yourself less expendable, okay? Not one of the 60% in Scott's example who have been automated out. Do you think the experts have been automated out, or do you think that, some of the people that were, doing rudimentary functions, those are the easiest ones to automate? Look, you hear Elon Musk talk about, forget about all the threats that we think exist. AI is the biggest threat to humanity. At the end of the day, you can't replace how we feel, how we think, the human instinct to want to collaborate, Those are the things, correct me if I'm wrong, Scott, that professionals should be focusing on in 2022.
I mean, 100%. This is, our what we do is parallel to what you do in the mortgage space, but they're very similar in a lot of ways. And it's going to take a lot in the next 18 months when the dust settles a little bit. There's going to be a lot of consolidation, especially on my side of it, where agencies rush to get big. And that takes a lot of sacrifice. It takes a lot of, effort. It is a collaborative business. You're not born knowing how to do what we do. It's not just sales. We have a lot of things that are tricky. Every home comes with its own unique issues in a transaction. And the people who can identify those issues and rush those problems to their partners, lenders, realtors, attorneys, those are the ones that are going to win in this business.
Okay. So to recap, we have a hard stop. Jenna said she has a hard stop in 38 seconds. This has to be your priority, Jenna. It can't be hard stops. I can't change the world on a time clock. So relationship, build your skill set, make yourself indispensable. Don't get greedy on your locks this week. I think we hit a top. I'm still 50% that rates are lower in the summer. Bulls and bears make money. Pigs get slaughtered. Figures lie and liars figure. Scott, thanks for joining me. Relationship, folks. Till next time. Rock out.